ثم جعلت أجر محمد صلواتك عليه وآله مودتهم في كتابك، فقلت قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى، وقلت ما سألتكم من أجر فهو لكم، وقلت ما أسألكم عليه من أجر إلا من شاء أن يتخذ إلى ربه سبيلا.
The Institute's a non-profit that started a couple of years ago, and the goal is to try to get Islamic primary sources, Shia primary sources, into English, so that people who don't know Arabic, who aren't specialized in these studies, they can access the knowledge that's there in language and in a style that's relevant to them. Translation's part of it. We do a lot of research to try to understand what the Arabic is saying in the original language. Our goal in translation is to try to get the effect on the English reader to be the same as the effect of the Arabic text on the Arabic reader. That's only part of it. A great part of our work goes into writing commentary on these texts. So we're trying to explain to our audience issues that we think are going to come into their minds as they're reading the text of Hadith or the Dua. This is the first thing that we've published. From the beginning, we started out and we've continued to work on Usul al-Kafi. That's a long-term project, kind of in between Usul al-Kafi, as different members of the team had extra time, they got these other projects out. So Al-Nudbah is the first of these extra kind of side projects, and it is the first thing that's been published. It's a multi-language effort. Our discussions, most of the team members, they know Persian primarily, and so our discussions happen in Persian. All the sources we're drawing from are Arabic, the text is Arabic. We write an Arabic commentary first, and that's going to be published separately for an Arabic-speaking audience. But all of that is geared to, and the goal of all of that is to finally get an English translation and commentary that's relevant to people in the West. Yeah, the Islamic Text Institute, from our inception, the mission is to work with primary sources. So that's going to be Hadith, Du'as, and then eventually Quran itself. And so we want to tackle those primary sources so that people can go back to that. There are plenty of other works of scholars that also need translating, but if we spread ourselves too thin, we won't get accomplish the goal that we have set out. Other people have to come along and do those other, translate those other books. Our works, they're definitely not casual reading. I don't think you would like, kind of kick back and read it for light reading. It's for somebody who wants to study the Dua and understand the Dua, or study a Hadith and understand it. You don't have to be a scholar. The goal is we're not writing in language that requires you to know all these specific kind of technical Arabic terms. We've tried to, basically there is no Arabic in the English translation. If anything, we'll explain a word and we'll have the Arabic word and then explain it so that an English reader can understand what that Arabic term means. But we've really stayed away from technical jargon because that's not the goal. We want to kind of remove that veil so that people with strong minds can understand these strong concepts, right, without having to have the technical knowledge. Al-Nudbah took us about a year. Not working full time. Again, it was kind of working in between the main project, which is Usul al-Kafi. But it's taken about a year, and the book itself, it contains about 145 pages. And what you get is that the first section is just the Arabic and the translation, right? The second section takes the Arabic, the translation, and then adds the commentary to it. Right? So there you'll see most of the page is filled up with commentary. That goes for about 80 or 90 pages. Then at the end of the book, we've also included the Dua Allahumma kulli waliyik, and so we put just a 3 or 4 page translation and commentary of that as well. And then of course there are indexes and everything, so you can search words in the text. There's also an insert in the book, which is a CD, an audio CD, which is going to have a translation of a recitation of the Arabic and the translation done by myself. And then there's also an Arabic recitation by a famous Irani reciter. Yeah, ITI it is a team effort. A lot of people are involved. There are 4 main scholars involved. We kind of work through an assembly line. So the first person, he tackles the text, contributes everything he can, writes everything down. Then all of his findings go to the second person, and so forth down the assembly line. Once the Arabic text is written, that goes again through an editing process through those same scholars. Everyone goes back and comments and critiques and everything until we're sure that the Arabic commentary is strong and solid. Once that's done, then I sit down as the translator and I translate that the text, and then kind of like it's more than a translation of the commentary. I'm rewriting the commentary for an English audience, using all the information and all the ideas, but writing them in a language that's applicable over here. Once English is written, the first draft is written, and that also goes through an editing process, a very detailed editing process. So another 3 or 4 people are involved there on the English side. And I remember with Al-Nudbah, we ended up, in the English editing process, we ended up finding so many things to address that we ended up going back and rewriting a lot of the Arabic commentary based on the English critiques as well. And so it's gone through a lot of development like that. We even have some non-Muslim editors. I went back to a whole high school English teacher and asked him to edit the text and to get an outside perspective, and he gave some really good comments that helped to make the text better. Then we have layout design, cover design. We have audio specialists who develop the CD. So a lot of people are involved in the project itself. ITI has a board, a five-member board, and they're constantly working behind the scenes to make everything happen, to raise money, to manage everything, to kind of to get the word out, and then of course there are all the donors. Right? A lot of people have contributed. ITI it's a non-profit. It's still starting out, and we we basically run off of donations of people who believe in the mission of ITI, and who have confidence in what we do and who we are. So a lot of people are involved. The main way for people to contribute is financially, because the things that ITI does, it requires technical knowledge. Like the work itself, it all requires long training in the Hausa, really strong English skills. So in terms of the technical development of the work, there's not a lot that non-specialists can do to help, but they can definitely help in 2 ways. One is financial. They can donate to the cause. They can also contribute their khums. We have an ijaza through Ayatul Sistani to use khum for this. And another way they can contribute is by getting the word out. Right now, their publications will be out there. Let people know about it. Use this now as a tool for teaching your kids, teaching students, teaching other people about Islam, right, through an outstanding translation, outstanding commentary. Yeah, we're working on a couple of du'as. So we have Ziyarat Ashura also coming up. We have Dua Kumail also coming up. We have some interns who recently started working with ITI. They expressed interest in learning the skills that ITI is using for these ahadith. So they are working on Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq, right, the supplication for noble virtues from Saifat al-Sajjadiyah. That's kind of another side project that will eventually turn into an independent work, inshallah. In the plan, like maybe further down the road, we'd like to work on Nahj al-Balagha as well. Kind of the ultimate goal that we have, we really hope that we'll have the life to do, and also the support from the community to do is the Quran itself. Right, to have an outstanding translation and outstanding commentary based on solid Shia research, right, for a Western audience. That's something that's kind of our ultimate dream. Du'as are an independent source that we have. Du'as aren't simply, this is something like, du'as in Shi'i literature are not simply ways to ask Allah for food and money and things that we need. The du'as themselves are full of, they're full lessons in life. Right, that's something that we tried to bring out into Al-Nudbah. We realized into Al-Nudbah first, and we tried to bring that out in our commentary to show that this is it's a solid lesson in our fundamental beliefs as Shias. It starts from Prophet, from Adam himself, salam, all the way through the prophets, through the imams, to the imam of the time now, and it addresses our basic beliefs. It establishes this relationship that we have with Allah, which is the essence of the religion totally. That's the nature of our du'as. And so every du'a, Dua Kumail, and all these different major du'as that we have, they're really outstanding sources in themselves. They're not simply preparation for something else. But it's true, like these are kind of they're projects that can be done in a much more manageable time. Well, that was kind of our thinking. Part of our thinking was that if we wait to do Usul al-Kafi, it might take 7 years, 10 years before we can get some volumes out. And people might lose interest or not, not be willing to support a project that hasn't produced something for so long. And so we wanted to produce something that would show what we're about, show the quality of our work in a shorter amount of time. Translation's it's not a task of simply taking words from one language and finding equivalent words in another language. Translation is much bigger than that. What we're trying to do in the translation is, first of all, we're going into the Arabic itself, down to the particles, so just like a fa or a wow, right? Just even those particles, we don't rest until we figure out why a particular particle has been used and how that's significant. And if it were any particle, it would say something different. Once we fully understand the intent, the spirit, the mood of the original, then try to transfer that whole kind of capsule of information, feeling, everything into the English. To do that, it's not just the work of a translator. One weakness that translators usually have, and maybe one pitfall that translators usually face, is that it's simply the translator himself sitting down with a text and trying to see both sides of the coin. So he looks at the Arabic, and then whatever he understands from the Arabic, he tries to put it into English. Right? What we've decided to add to this is on the Arabic side, right? It's not good enough just for one person to sit down and do that. It requires this team effort to be able to scour the sources, to be able to spend the time, the man hours, to be able to analyze every single word, every grammatical structure, theological issue, historical issue, everything, so that our original understanding from the Arabic text is solid, and what we're transferring into the English is truly like a correct understanding and a defensible understanding of that Arabic text. I mean, that's something that we can do as a team that no individual can do. So it doesn't really make any sense, or it's true, we could not write the commentary, simply to do all the research and then have the translation, but that would be a shame to have all that information and not transfer that into English as well. One of the ideas that we've had since we started out was that translation by itself is not good enough. In fact, it could be detrimental to the purpose. Like, even translation of the Quran is not good enough for guiding people. People with very, very different beliefs, like Sunnis, Shias, all different sects in between, they all find their inspiration in the same book, and they're able to have sometimes very, very contradictory beliefs based on the same book. So the text itself is not good enough. We need the text through the filter of correct understanding, well-found understanding. Right? Somebody who can see the big picture, and who sees from the beginning to the end of the Quran, knows the literature of the ahadith as well, and the guidance of the imams. Right? For a person like that to then go in and be able to explain what a verse means and transfer that meaning correctly to a person who doesn't have access to all that information. Right? So we think it would be a great disservice if someone just translated a hadith and passed them out to people, especially a hadith that are problematic, because our ahadith are not all authentic. Just because a hadith says Imam Sadiq said something doesn't mean he actually said it, right? If it was Imam Sadiq alayhi salam himself saying something, of course we would take that, and that would be a sacred text, for a sacred source for us. But the hadith, between the hadith and the Imam himself, there's so many different things that have happened and could happen, and it's up to the scholar to sit down and figure out, did the Imam actually say something like this? If he did, what did he actually mean? How faithfully was this text transferred from the Imam to us now? And what are the implications? What were the contextual clues? What was happening around the hadith? Was there somebody who asked an issue and the Imam was answering using this hadith? Or was there some political thought happening at the time, and that's why he said this? Was he under duress and said it not because he believed it, but because he had to say it, otherwise he or his companions would be in danger? So there are all these different aspects, and that has to come in the commentary so that somebody knows what to do with that particular phrase from the Imams. The thing that could have the most significant difference, or the thing that could make the greatest difference for our community of Muslims, is education. If our people could be educated. To be educated, you have to have access to sources. And that's the goal of ITI. We're trying to put sources in an academically strong, like theologically strong, strong in every way, in a form that's strong in every way. We put that into people's hands so they can access this knowledge and benefit from it.
Then you ordained in your book that the recompense for Muhammad, may your mercy be upon him and his family, would be devotion to his family when you said, "Tell them, I do not ask any compensation for my work except your devotion to my family." You also said, "Tell them, whatever compensation I have asked from you is for your benefit." You also said, "Tell them, I do not ask any compensation for my work except from him who wishes to travel the path to his Lord's proximity." Thus, the Prophet and his family became the only path for us to reach you, to reach your pleasure.